I'm gonna need someone to help me. I'm gonna need somebody's hand. I'm gonna need someone to hold me down. I'm gonna need someone to care. I'm gonna rise and shake my body. I'll start pulling out my hair. I'm gonna cover myself with the ashes of you, and nobody's gonna give a damn. Son of a bitch, give me a drink. One more night, but it's can't be me. Son of a bitch, if I can't get clean, I'm gonna drink my life away. Now for 17 years I've been going in back. 17 more will bury me. And somebody please just tie me down. Oh, somebody give me a goddamn drink. Son of a bitch, give me a drink. One more night, this can't be me. Son of a bitch, if I can't get clean, I'm gonna drink my life away. My heart is breaking, hands are shaking, bugs are crawling all over me. My heart is breaking, hands are shaking, bugs are crawling all over me. My heart is breaking, hands are shaking, bugs are crawling all over me. My heart is aching, hands are shaking, bugs are crawling all over me. Son of a bitch, give me a drink. One more night, this can't be me. Oh, son of a bitch, if I can't get clean, I'm gonna drink my life away. Yeah. Son of a bitch, give me a drink. Son of a bitch, but this can't be me. Son of a bitch, if I can't get clean, I'm gonna drink my life away.
Welcome everybody to our September 2020 virtual LBG meeting. Let's go ahead and hit the welcome slide there, Frank. And I've seen a few check-ins from people on the chat there. Tell us what you're drinking. Let's see, Frank, did this? The slides machine still okay? There we go. Seen a few check-ins there from Tim, Travis, Steven, myself. on YouTube. If you're there on Facebook or YouTube, tell us what you're drinking, who's here, kind of good roll call. I know we've seen several of you here in the Zoom call. Glad to have some more live faces out here. Let's see. Well, give it a minute. Oh, there we go. We got another one out there. That's quite the name, Polyester Pigeon. There's some unique beers out there. All right, we'll let people check in for another minute, and feel free to say hey as you pop in if you come in late or whatever. Let's go ahead and hit that event slide, and we can start cooking through some of those. So several of us were just in our virtual hoppy hour that runs from about 4:30 till today. It was till the meetings start, but sometimes they go 7 or 7:30 or even 8. Just all of us chit chatting and drinking beer and seeing what's going on. And we have a slide about that. Let's see. September, we're here at the monthly meeting. We're going to talk about our t-shirt pickup. We've already had a couple t-shirt pickups, but we're going to have one. We're going to have some more coming up we'll talk about here. We got Brewfest updates. We discussed some of those last month, but we'll talk about it a little bit more. Then sooner than later, we'll have our next 2 monthly meetings coming up. And don't forget, the November one is when we start nominating officers for next year's officer group. And we will have several openings this year because I myself will be on my second year on president. So I'll be unable to, you can't reelect me again. So someone else is going to have to take the nomination on that. I believe Lee also is hitting the end of her term, and a few other spots. So there'll definitely be some spots opening up. And then we'll talk about the holiday party here too. That's it for the long event list. Let's start going through the individual slides there, Frank. So as I mentioned, Hoppy Hour. Here's actually a screenshot. The top one's from tonight. At least December at this point, we're looking at just keeping doing the virtual Hoppy Hours. It's going to be the same room code. So pop in anytime, say hey, drink a beer with us, and we might even play some games. Talk about Brewfest there. Oh, it looks like we had a few more check-ins come in there. I see the Pseudo Sue and a Braggot IPA. That's interesting. All right. So back to the slide there. Brewfest, we previously announced last month's meeting. We're going to go ahead and postpone it to 2021. Obviously, large gatherings kind of a no-no and, not necessarily a good thing to have our name attached to it, nor do we want to have something happen. So we're just going to push it out, have a good time in 2021, and make it the right type of time versus trying to hobble rules and change stuff. We checked into a lot of options. There just wasn't good options. So, but the next slide, let's talk about options. Let's talk about virtual Brewfest. We're kind of cooking this one still. We've moved it online, similar to our Mayfest. Those of us brewing live streamed all day, chit chatted in Zoom and drank beer. We're going to do some swapped brews, though. One of the fun things about Brewfest is getting to drink other people's beer. So, that's a good perk. So at the next couple t-shirt pickups, I'll have a beer swap table. If you've got some homebrew packaged or you want to come pick up some from somebody else, we'll have a table there. You can kind of take a beer, leave a beer. So that'll be set up there. So we'll talk about those t-shirt swap pickups on the next day. But the Zoom call, I'm going to open it at 8 a.m. If you're brewing, that you can always pop in early. I know a lot of people get started early, but the actual event we're going to schedule for noon, just like Brewfest proper was. So that'll be when that happens. And you can drink some of those swapped brews, talk about what you picked up from people. And if several of us pick up some of those swapped brews, we can talk about what we think about it. All right. Shirts. So if you happen to, I know several of you caught, I think I had, 7 people come by and get their shirts. I'd love to get rid of more of them. These are the shirts we've been pitching for the last few months. We have them. We're distributing them now. The next 2 opportunities, this Sunday, Lee's house. The address is already in the forum, but we'll repost and advertise it again. And then Thursday, September 24th, that will happen at the Lawrence Creates Makerspace. So that address is also posted on the forum, but I'll get that posted to Facebook as well. So come get your shirts if you bought them. If you didn't happen to buy them but wanted a shirt, we do have a couple available in each size, small, I believe, or medium through 2XL. But we've got several extra shirts, so feel free to message and check if you want to make sure we have your size, or just come on up and grab you a shirt. They're $10 each. And when you come to pick up, make sure you've paid. Jake's going to start sending out some reminders here. A lot of people have paid, but we still have some outstanding monies for our shirts to collect. So we do need to get those collected and do need you to pay before you come get it. So let's see. Let's talk about the holiday party. So normally that would be occurring on Saturday, December 5th at the W Banquet Hall. We've been talking to the banquet hall people. I believe there was somebody that was had suggested we go ahead and address this. So we're going to talk about basically kiboshing this year's holiday party, postpone, like we've done with our other events. It's not the right time to have such a large group event, as fun as it is. Reschedule at the W and have it next year. So they've generally has already talked to them. Do you want to generally hit that and just what W's told us about picking a date and carrying our stuff?
Sure. So when we book the date for the holiday party, they make us pay half of what basically the balance will be to reserve next year's date. So that's all we've paid so far. And they said that they wouldn't have a problem applying that to next year's date if we want to go ahead and pick that out. It's usually the first Saturday in December is what I've always picked out. So if that's available. I told her we hadn't decided yet in terms of if we would have something, but I don't think it's going to be worth it for what we pay for that space and not be able to have that many people there. So,
Okay. So do we want to let's go ahead and carry a motion since we've got quite a big audience, both in person and in the chat. I think I'm counting almost 8 or 9 people in the chat and another, we were on 2 pages over here now. I think there's 12 of us here. So we got at least almost 20 people close to. We're going to carry kind of a simple vote since we're online at this point. I'm going to carry for nays, start with that, and we'll see what we get. If you happen to be opposed to getting rid of our this December's holiday party and not having one for 2020, go ahead and say something in the chat, or you can unmute your mic here if you're in the call. Otherwise, for the sake of simplicity, we'll assume you're in agreement if we don't hear anything here in the next little bit.
Hey Ryan, I'll make the motion
Okay.
to postpone the holiday party till next year.
Okay. We have a motion out there.
You've got a second if you need it.
All right, we'll take a second. So the motion is to postpone the holiday party. If, like I said, if there's anyone in opposition, voice your opposition, whether it be text or unmute yourself. Otherwise, we'll. Unfortunately, this isn't Teams. Teams has an actual hand raise, and I just collect votes by hand raise here. So, but I'm not seeing any opposition to our motion. So I think we're going to go ahead and process through with carrying the motion to move our holiday party reservation with the W to next year. So we'll take note of.
Ryan, I'm looking at YouTube. Do we want to maybe revisit this after the treasurer's report or something? Because we're just catching up with the slide.
We can definitely leave. We can hold off on making judgment just till the end there, I guess, and see if anybody else comes out in opposition in the interim, late joiners or YouTube chat here. Yeah, generally, did they give you any sort of limit or date they want to hear by?
no, they usually don't reach out until 30 days before the actual event because that's when we have to pay the damage deposit that's refundable. So I didn't expect to hear from them until 30 days out. But
Okay.
so I'd say we definitely have to make a decision by then.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and carry it on the forums for 2 weeks. We've opened the motion. It sounds like so far we haven't heard anything, but we'll carry it here for 2 weeks. I'll put a post out there. We'll collect any additional input and carry it from there. So that does put us into Jake's treasure report, though. So I'll let Jake take over for that.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. So for the treasurer report this month, I wanted to start with a little bit of an update on our meeting space. So I spoke with Graham at the church yesterday, and they kind of have a proposal for us. They have a contract drawn up. It will be an increase from last year. So instead of 800, they'll be charging 900. Um, and this is actually for 11 months. So that, equates to about $81.81 per month, since we generally don't meet in December. So what they're proposing, let's first talk about the price increase. So he's claiming that some of their costs are going up, but more importantly, they're going to have to sanitize the whole church, and that's additional cost for them. So that's kind of where that increase is coming from. But on the upside, we have banked 4 free months that we didn't use this past year, and so the contract year starts July 1st. And so we've agreed to basically keep our spot until until through the end of the year. But if we want to start up again, say whenever that starts, we'll get those 4 months right at the beginning of that, and we'll go ahead and sign the contract at that time. And then we'll be prorated. It'll be a prorated total for however many months there are left in that contract year. So, for example, let's say we meet in February, we won't pay anything for February through May, and then we'll just pay the $81.81 for June. Um, I've made a post on the forums. We've got, I think, probably plenty of time to discuss this. So if anybody has any concerns, comments, respond on the forum, and we'll field whatever questions that come up. So then I'll uh, get into the membership. So we're holding strong at 88 members. You can hit the next slide there, Frank. Um, we've actually, I think that's actually a pretty good number given the circumstances. So we've kind of seen a little bit of a decline in new memberships, which is understandable this stage in the year. So let's talk about the financials for this month. So we'll hit the next slide. So what we've got this month is the main expense is really from insurance. So I mentioned last month that I was going to be paying insurance. We went ahead and paid that, and that's where most of that expense is from. And then I'm sure we'll hear about the book that was purchased, or maybe we talked about that last month. I can't remember. And then we have our incomes, pretty much all membership dues and T-shirts. And I did go ahead and finally made a deposit this past month, so moved a little bit of the petty cash to checking. And then our next slide, you can kind of see where we landed for the month. It was overall negative, but understandable for the insurance cost. So I think we're still doing pretty well for the year. So not having to pay rent is really, helping us out. So I think that's it for me.
All right, thanks, Jake. Looks like a library slide there with Lynette. Let's see. Oh, Lynette, you're muted still.
Yeah, sorry. Not too much going on still. Still open to suggestions. If you have anything interesting you can recommend, please let me know. And that's all.
All right. Let's see. Are we chugging right into fresh on the forum? I was like, do we have? But that's pretty much the end. This month's been kind of quiet. There's not a lot fresh. We've talked about posted about Virtual Brewfest, and there's been the t-shirt pickup info. Otherwise, not a whole lot in the beer world, though we were just talking about that Lawrence supply shop, so I'm sure that'll get talked about over there here soon. So they're expanding that Lawrence homebrew supply. All right. Well, at this point, we're going to get cooking over on Josh and I seminar. It looks like Josh is here too. We're both ready to go. We're going to talk about brewing software today. And we asked, I know, a question on the forum and on Facebook there to cover what kind of software are you using. Next slide there, Frank. So, here, I left BrewToad on there because I know a few people had used it for a while, but it's unfortunately been discontinued. But otherwise, the more common things out there right now, Beersmith, ProMash, Brewfather, Brewer's Friend. I'm going to talk about Beersmith. That's the one I use. I know Josh was at one point using Beersmith and switched over to Brewfather. So he's going to be talking to us about Brewfather. If anyone that's watching happens to be using another software and you do want to share something, we can have you join in and share. I know there's a few Pro Mashers out there and some other alternative softwares. So if you want to show off what you're using, this is kind of your chance for people who maybe either aren't using a software right now because they just go get recipe cards elsewhere, or don't. There's multiple reasons you would use software. So maybe they're not doing that. And this is your chance to kind of get some previews and tips and or find out some more advanced functions of the software. So let's get talking about Beersmith. Got some dates here. I'm not going to read all of them, but the first release was in 2003. Kind of a collection of tools they had put together, not really as polished of a thing as now. But he eventually quit his job, committed to Beersmith full time, and launched a Beersmith 2, which has been the version for a long while now, back in June 2011. I was just using Beersmith 2 till this week when I saw the survey results, and I went ahead and picked up Beersmith 3. But that came out in June 2018, so there's a few upgrades. We're going to talk about those here. So let's go to the differences between Beersmith 2 and Beersmith 3. I figure I'd pull your leg for a minute, and these are Beersmith in 2 and 3, and it doesn't look like there's much. They look like pretty much the exact same window, few font changes, but there's quite a few things under the hood here that's different. They've incorporated support for mead, wine, cider, and more adjuncts, other things. Traditionally, it was pretty much grain hops, yeast, and some adjuncts, but now they actually have like juices, whole fruits, extracts, honeys. They have other compounds available for import to build into your recipes, so it's a little more diverse for other people other than just beer brewers. They upgrade some of the water tools. I know a lot of people use water spreadsheets and stuff like that. We've talked about water in a previous meeting, but they did enhance some of those water tools in here. Otherwise, there's more sophisticated hop whirlpool options. We're all pretty much, I think, calling in from Kansas here, but if you were to be high altitude brewing, there's some hop adjustments for high altitude users. And previously, back in my yeast seminar, I showed off a few online yeast starter tools. They're still my tool of choice, but Beersmith 3 did add now to where you can do a 2-stage yeast starter. That should cover you in most scenarios, but again, just from habit, I've been using the online tools I previously showed you, and I think it was April. So Beersmith, in general, I'll show you most of us know how to do a recipe build, but I'll just quick whip together something. But we'll go on to the next slide, which is talk about adding your own equipment. So there's a lot of pre-built equipment profiles. And again, we'll go through that here in the software when I switch to the live view or to like demonstrating it. But, you can use pre-built if you've got like a generic pot pan. They even have Grainfather and some of the other type built systems. So if you have an off-the-shelf system, you don't need to do any equipment definition. You're just going to come in, you're going to say, I have this, and boom, it's ready to go. But if you want to build your equipment, like a lot of us have, done kegel conversions, homemade mash tuns, that kind of thing, you can actually define all those parameters and there's some terms here as kind of, if you're not familiar with thermodynamics, specific heat and stuff like that. It's basically just so you can calibrate all the temperature tools and the strike water temperature tools. That way it gives you the most dialed in method of getting your brew day going. The next one, some people do this. I personally don't. I have a couple items in, but managing your pricing and inventory. That's the next slide there, Frank. Yep, there you go. Theoretically, you could actually have your exact keep track of what's in your garage or your basement there and have okay, I got 4 pounds of this grain, I got 20 pounds of this, I got 6 8-ounce packages of hops. And then when you build a recipe, you can pick from your actual inventory, or it'll tell you you're short, or you're using more than you have in inventory. That's a little bit much for me. If someone is doing that, I'd love to hear about it, and if what they've had happen positively from that. But we'll just peek at that real fast. You can also set the pricing, so that way you can kind of know what your beer is going to cost. Since the juice and fruits are kind of new to Beersmith 3, I was just playing with that before the meeting, and I added a gallon or 2 gallons of juice. I don't know what bougie juice they have, but it was going to be based on their built-in pricing, $200 of juice. That is some wild blueberry juice there. I'd love to find that stuff. So that's the pricing. We'll talk about that. And then add-ons. One of the big changes from Beersmith 2, besides the things I mentioned before, was these add-on libraries. And these feature different, like you see here, malts. You've got equipment. So there's the anvil, but you can add like the Grainfather and some of those other systems. Right here, they're in the library. They're just not preloaded. There's adjuncts galore. I mean, there used to only be, I think, 2 dozen or so in Beersmith 2. This list is huge at this point. There is so much content you can add in. And additionally, there's a lot of tools, and so we can quick show the tool slide, but I'm going to jump into Beersmith itself. I'm going to do a screen share, Frank, am I going to break anything if I do that? Are we good?
No, it's going to capture whatever is presenting on.
Okay.
Zoom, so.
I just didn't know if it was going to like boot your slides and make a mess to have to recoup from.
Nope, it's perfect. I meant to say in the pre-show, so the reason that the change happens visually with Beersmith 2 and Beersmith 3, under the hood, Beersmith 2 is based on Microsoft Outlook 2002 or 2003, and Beersmith 3 is based on Microsoft Outlook 2010. So a lot of that, what you see, is what he got for free by using a Microsoft template.
Oh, that's a hoot. I did not know that about that. All right. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to go ahead and, I was just saying I just upgraded Beersmith 3. I'm going to take the gamble, share that, and hope if there's nothing different that I missed from Beersmith 2. So as you see, you have your library of samples. And one of the big things for Beersmith 3 is they offer cloud subscriptions. And actually, I should talk about the software license. Maybe we can wrap up with the license differences once Josh talks about his. But you can transfer recipes. Oh, okay. Well, I forgot to log in, so maybe I'll have to share Beersmith 3 for that, or 2 for that. But you can actually sync recipes to the cloud. So that way, if you have, say, your phone, Beersmith 3 offers a phone app. Or a second computer. Like I like to do everything here at my desktop, but on brew day, I do use it to manage my brew day, because I'll show you some of the timers built in. But transferring recipes is kind of clunky if you say just copied this recipe to another folder, to a thumb drive to your computer. If you have limited cloud space, you can always bring it to the cloud on the other computer, take it off the cloud, and then it's still transferred across machines easier. So that's like the favorites and managing all that here. And you can actually import. There's a cloud search for the general other people's recipes. And so here you can see everybody else's. So even if you're not using the software because you don't want to build recipes, you're maybe not there yet, or you're just not, I just want a good, easy stout. You can pull other people's here and even see ratings. But unfortunately, it's not coming through, or I'm getting none. Here we go, by rating. And so not a lot of ratings out there, but 3 people have given this a 5.0. So wow, that's a big batch. So do pay attention though. With Beersmith, there is scaling tools. Like I'm going to go ahead and just pull this recipe. Save a copy. And I'm going to save it to my, let's put it in the samples just because I don't want to muddle my recipes here. So with this, I just download this. It's a 45-gallon recipe, but Beersmith has built-in functionality here for scaling. So now in this case, I'm going to go to, we'll say a brew in a bag 5-gallon system. So batch size 5 gallons. Efficiency I'll leave there. I think it's a little high, but apparently this guy's for a brew in a bag, but this guy's previous efficiency was marked as 82%. So what they're going to do with this, you can toggle this and it'll adjust the grains and such to keep everything the same while scaling it down. And then here is the new scaled down version. It's all ready to go for a 5-gallon batch. And then even on top of that, there's another tool here back on my recipes. Let's see. Oh, it was under here. Tools. Oh man, now I don't remember this. I just ran into it again and tried it. Now I don't. Oh, convert. Duh. It's right next to the scale recipe. So it's an all grain recipe right now. The other function is how is you go pull a recipe and you're an extract brewer. You don't want to have all the equipment for all grain. It's a lot of extra equipment. So this will convert it for you. Now, I'd love to hear if somebody's had bad luck with either of these conversion processes, because a lot of it's just based on either rules he's programmed in or stuff like that. So, it's not a flawless conversion. Maybe other people have better methods of conversion. But now it's an extract kit. It's like that Old Spice commercial. Now something is diamonds, but instead it's an extract kit, 5 gallons, and we started with a 45-gallon all grain recipe. So it's a lot of cool functionality, but depending on your brew level, do you want to build a recipe? No, you can search it. Do you want to brew an all grain recipe? You can change it. Like, there's a lot of cool tools built into Beersmith here. We've showed manipulating other people's recipes. I'll quick just start a new recipe just for anyone who's not used this software. I know most of us, this might be what we do, but it's as easy as new recipe. You pick your equipment setting here. So I'll go back to that brew in a bag 5-gallon. Oh, because that's a new error I'm not used to. Because I think I had it was extract all grain. Okay. It's like, I'm not familiar with that. So we'll go to, picking your style isn't required to make the recipe in here. The one thing it'll do if you pick your style is it sets up your goalposts for what you're trying to achieve with your style. So, the BJCP guidelines will give you your outline of a pale ale is not a 12% beer. Well, here's the goalpost for that. And same with bitterness. It doesn't lack any bitterness. It's not 100 something IBUs. Here's the range. So then you can start tacking in stuff. So in this case, I'll go with, we'll make a smash with Amarillo. So there's that. I'll add 2-row. And here's where you can pick different maltsters depending on where you're buying. If you don't see them in the list, here, I'm going to quick add my, to 10 pounds and see where that gets me. It gets me close. So if you don't see your maltster here, though, this is where you can go into add-ons and go pull. So in this case, Mecha Grade is one that some folks in KCBM were just talking about too. You can add the Mecha Grade malts here. So now it's installed. That easy.
You
close
can,
this window.
In that plugin screen, you can. There's a drop down to filter by the types of plugins you want. So.
Oh yes, that's right. So could have skipped through a few others there and just gone fermentables, and the list is a little shorter here. So now this is where it would have been, but I've already brought it over. So it does. Once you import something, you won't find it in this list. So if you're losing your mind wondering why you can't find it, it's because it's probably over here. Especially if you, like right now, I only have this many imported. You can see them all, but if you do bring a lot of stuff over, it could get buried and you'll forget what you've got. But here's that. So let's go add that Mecha Grade. Actually, I don't know if I know enough about their stuff to do that. Let's see. We'll do the Pale American Barley, do 10 pounds of that. So that's that one I just imported. I'm going to delete the generic 2-row there. And if you notice here, my very, very, very basic smash is right within my gravity target. Bitterness colors a little bit, but I picked a pale malt. I could have gone something, like a Munich, I guess, and probably hitting that. Something in that 5 to 10 range that would have delivered me the color I want. And then you can even, with my recipes, I don't always put the yeast in here, but you can literally add anything, even your water. So if you have your neighborhood water programmed in, like here, I do have water 1. I'm in Johnson County. I do have the typical range values that, so on your annual water report, we should have another water seminar soon, you'll see the report values. I went ahead and programmed it in based on the average amount, because summer it changes, winter it changes. This gets me ballpark, but again, I'm not doing water calcs within Beersmith, so you set it up for what the level you use. You know, if you're not doing advanced features, you don't use advanced features. But at this point, we've even set our mash. We did a brew in a bag, so I guess I forget. I don't normally choose brew in a bag here. But otherwise, once you are on brew day, you can even come in here to the mash timer. Oops. Well, so here's your mash profile. You can make additional adjustments based on your equipment, or like ton dead space. There's 0 gallons. We'll go to a 1 gallon. It's a little aggressive, but just to show the differences here. And my water pH, it's showing distilled because I did not choose. So this would be where you would adjust it if you were trusting Beersmith to do your adjustments.
So this screen here, this mash screen, when I was before I went to brew in a bag with the Grainfather system, so getting grain tip and then setting your mash tun to a specific heat helped me dial in exactly what strike temperature to get my water to hit my mash temperature. Like doing this over and over again, and then taking those measurements and then putting them into this and adjusting my equipment profile a little at a time, I could hit strike temperature within 1 or 2 degrees every time.
Yeah, I've had similar successes, and unfortunately, I didn't prepare with the correct equipment profile. I just grabbed a brew in a bag here, but there's a pot and a cooler, so we'll grab that instead. And if you'll notice between the two, your values change here based on how big your equipment is, how big the batch is, and Beersmith automatically just every time automatically adjusts for all that. So that's the real cool thing. But they have assumptions. So here's a 1/4 gallon for the ton dead space. If you've got a pretty big domed false bottom, you're going to probably need a bigger space. And then once you're actually brewing that day, this is my favorite feature, is running the timer, because then you don't got to set a kitchen timer, or if you set it for one, what was the other time? So a hop edition was 60, then no, it's all here. You just hit run and it's going to count up, and the beeping is horrendous. You won't miss it. And you can just hit the next step, and it will keep resetting the timers. Well, oh, here's my bullet. So there's 2 different timers, but that's another thing. So then you can add, so here's the example I did. I was trying to find, this is the one bummer. I couldn't find a library with regular blueberries for this recipe. I didn't add a gallon of blueberry juice, especially, like I said, this $200 stuff. That's pretty crazy. But I added whole blueberries I pureed and cooked down myself. But I couldn't find them, so I went ahead and just, for now, for demonstration, this is one of the new features of Beersmith 3, is some of these additional atypical libraries. But otherwise, here I had the yeast in here. I had the milk, the lactose. And then, as you can see, I blew out all my parameters because blueberry juice makes things dark, and I added a lot of extra sugar. So you need to calibrate your stuff, but you can adjust. And if you notice here, I do have my inventory from my 2-row. So it tells me I have 55 pounds, even though I'm prescribing 4 pounds here. And I don't believe it pulls inventories out. That's one thing it won't manage. You have to go manage. Oh, no, remove. There you go. I forget. Too many buttons I don't use. I don't use the inventory management features. I'm a very simple beersmither. Has anybody said anything in the chat of something they've wanted to try in Beersmith or had any issues? I'm looking now. No, I haven't seen anything. So this is a predominant thing in the features. Here's the tools we were talking about. Like I said, with yeast starters, I still use a third-party yeast starter tool, but they do have it here, so you can do it within Beersmith. Again, if your thing's within 2 steps. If you have multiple steps after that, that's outside the bounds of this. Same with the hydrometer adjustment or refractometer adjustment. You can do unfermented. So if you had a 21 bricks, there's your SG right there. I always forget this is here, and I end up using a third-party tool today as part of the making the presentation. I ran into a few of these tools. It's been forever I've used. There is quite a bit here. It's just you get used to the tools you use and you end up using those. So there, in addition to just the typical recipe build stuff and the tools within a recipe, there are a bunch of additional items out there you can call upon. I'm gonna let Josh here if he's ready.
One thing before we move on to Josh, the tool that I use the most is the weight or volume to weight tool. So, or weight to volume tool. So all of my fermenters have a tare weight printed on them, and I literally measure the weight of the fermenter with wort ready to ferment in the container, and then measure the gravity, and then it tells me exactly my volume within reasonable margin of error. Instead of doing like these measuring sticks that we used to do with like wood, and you would like stick it in, and you had a graduated homemade measuring stick because you knew the diameter of your. I used to actually try to measure the diameter of my cylinder and try to do this like cylindrical measurement of volume to but I use this almost every time, exactly every time I brew, more than any other
You're
tool.
fancier than me. I calibrated my measuring stick by I took a gallon jug of water and just poured 1 gallon jug. Okay, Mark, that's 1 gallon. Pour the second jug, and just kept doing it till I had the whole stick covered. A lot of carry error, because if each one's 0.9, 0.9, 0.9, all of a sudden at that top, you're not even close to what you thought you were. But yeah, yours is definitely the fancier method. I like that tool. All right. Did anybody else? I know, like I said, there was no YouTube comments, but anybody right now here watching the or here in the Zoom call with us have anything they want to look over in Beersmith? Otherwise, we can always come back to it if you're like, oh yeah, can you do this? Especially after seeing Josh's presentation. So I'll stop sharing. And Josh, were you going to do based on slides or first, or are you going to do? Or do you have any live stuff?
Everything's going to be with slides.
Okay.
And then, at the end, if somebody has a particular question, I'd be happy to pull up a demo, share my screen, and show that.
All right, I'll let you take it away.
All right. So Brewfather was initially released in 2018, and then version 2 was actually released in March of this year. Since it was introduced, there's been an average of about 3 minor version updates per month. So they're continuously listening to feedback, providing updates to the software, and I really don't see them going away anytime soon. Some of the main features to talk about with Brewfather is it is a multi-device app, and what that means is that you're going to have the same experience regardless if you're using your phone, your tablet, your computer, if you have the native Android and iOS apps, or if you're just browsing to it with Chrome or one your browser, it's going to be the same experience regardless. And with that is the continuous sync. And so what that means with continuous sync is that any change that you make on your Android device or your iPhone, is automatically in sync with anything else you open it. So if you open up the Chrome browser, it's going to show, or your internet browser of choice, it's going to show you the same thing that you're seeing there. So if I create a recipe on my phone, instantly it's already up there to where you can see it on any other device. It is free to use. And I think, yeah, there you go, Frank. It's free to use. And what that means is most of the features are completely free. The only real limitation, or the main limitation to the free version, is that you're only able to store 10 recipes in their database. So once you create 10 recipes and you go to try to create the 11th, it's going to prevent you from actually creating that 11th recipe. If you really didn't want to pay for premium, the one way to kind of get around that is to export some of those recipes out as like beer XML files, save them to your computer, delete them on Brewfather, and then create new recipes. So you could do that and you could get along just fine. I think for premium, $20 per year is a very reasonable price. And I like to support developers on stuff where I'm actually using it, quite often, and getting a lot of use out of it. So for $20 a year, you get unlimited recipes. You also get integrations like with other devices. So Tilt, for instance, they have a device that you put in your fermenter that tracks gravity and temperature changes, and it can actually send that data into Brewfather and track it within there as well. So that's one of the features to premium, but really for the unlimited recipes, I think the $20 a year is worth it alone. And then one kind of a good thing with it is if you were in the Beersmith ecosystem for a while. So like I used Beersmith for about 6 years, and it did everything I really needed it to do. But as I switched to Brewfather and really kind of dig in what they have, to import all those recipes took me about 3 minutes. It's about 2 button clicks in 3 minutes. It was really simple to do. So next slide, Frank. So why I think it's the best brewing software, why I personally switched to it after 6 years of using Beersmith, and why if you're looking for a brewing software now to start out with, or if you're ready to switch to something, why I think this is the one to look at. The biggest reason probably is that, it's a modern, clean interface. Beersmith, while it did everything I really needed it to do, really looks kind of like a Windows, XP or even previous probably design, which is fine, gets the job done. But I do like stuff to look a little modern, clean. I do think the interface is a little easier to get started with if you've never jumped into it. Beersmith, to do a lot of the stuff in Beersmith, you have to dig into some of the settings and go a little farther than I think you do in Brewfather. And I think it's real intuitive. And then another big kind of advantage is the dark mode. So you can choose your theme. You can have a light theme or a dark theme. And I prefer dark, so it works pretty well. Also, it's fully featured. And by that, I mean, it does everything that Beersmith can do. And I think it does a little bit more. And in my opinion, I think it does those things a little bit better, and it's more accurate, especially with like water treatment. I tried using the water treatment stuff in Beersmith, and it never quite predicted my pH correctly. Never really, I didn't feel like the calculations it gave were super accurate. And that's mainly using Beersmith 2. I know they improved that in Beersmith 3, but I never really gave that a shot. So I don't know how much better that is. But, so I know that everything I've done in Brewfather, it's been pretty consistent as far as predicting pH and things like that. Support has been extremely responsive. I've received, I had an issue, or not really an issue, but I had a request to add a feature to Brewfather. I reached out on Facebook. I sent a message to the developer, and within just a few minutes, I actually had a response. He talked to me for a few minutes about what the request was, agreed with me, and added it to version control, right there on the spot. So it's not added yet, but I'm imagining or hoping that it'll be added in the future. So, and then offline usage, I haven't really used that yet, but it is a pretty cool little feature. So the way that it's developed is like, if you've opened the app once before, the next time you open it, if you didn't have internet, you could actually do everything you need to do. So you could create a recipe, you could brew, go through your brew day. You can do that all offline. And then once you do get into an internet connection or, have an internet connection again, it'll actually push those changes up. So it'll sync everything you did offline up to the cloud to where it's stored. Inventory tracking is really good. I don't know that it's really any better than Beersmith, but the fact that they do have that, and you can kind of keep track of your ingredients and know when you need to restock, works pretty well. And then one kind of unique feature, I think, is the batch tracking. So, from building your recipe to brew day to fermentation, conditioning, packaging, it's pretty easy to see the status and the progress of your beer. So, if you're in the fermentation stage and there's a dry hop pending, you'll actually have a little notification at the top telling you, hey, you have a dry hop to do. So that's pretty neat. Next slide, Frank. So this searching and sorting recipes, it's a pretty simple feature, but I think it's pretty intuitive. I like how it works. You can sort the sort your recipes by their name, or you can sort them by the style of beer or the date, anything like that, which makes them kind of easier to find. And then also the searching works really well. So you can type just a few characters and find the beer that you're looking for. Next slide. So tools, and then the big part of this tools is the mash tun calibration. So tools, they've got a few cool things, and you can find those in other places, but they're all right here together. So if you wanted to do a yeast starter calculation, without actually being in your recipe, you can do that here. Gravity correction is another one that's really cool. So if you overshot your gravity and you wanted to reduce that prior to packaging or fermentation, it'll calculate for you, how much water to dilute that wort with in order to hit your OG, or it'll tell you how much extract to add if you wanted to increase your OG. So that's kind of a neat feature. But the big one here that I really want to touch is the mash tun calibration. And the reason that's important is when you go to create your equipment profile, having that mash tun calibration is going to help you to hit your strike temperatures, and hit your mashing temp for that matter. And it's pretty simple using this calculator. You take your initial mash tun temperature, which generally would probably be room temp, and then you're going to add a specified volume of boiling water, wait about 5 minutes, and then take the temperature of that water that's in the mash tun again, enter that reading here in the calculator, and it's going to spit out the heat capacity for you. And so you would just write down that number or remember it. And then when you go to create your equipment profile, you'd put that in there. And when you go to do your strike temperature, it'll tell you right where to go, right how to heat that up to hit your mashing temps and your sparge temps. Next slide. So equipment profile. In my opinion, this is one of the most important things with any of the brewing softwares you use. So Beersmith, it's a big deal. It's a big deal with Brewfather. If you don't have your equipment profile quite dialed in, it's not a big deal. You're still going to have good beer. But if you're looking to try to improve your efficiency, make sure you hit your original gravities, hit your volumes. Your equipment profile is probably the first place to mess with that, to really get that and to improve your efficiency. With Brewfather, you can kind of pick your, if you have a more common all-in-one system like the Grainfather, they have some predefined profiles you can pick and start running with. Even with those predefined ones, you probably want to, over the first couple brew days, tweak a few things, because even though the equipment's the same, the way you brew is a little bit different. So you can pick up and get started and going, and it works out really good, but tweaking it as well. And then also creating your own profile if you don't have standard equipment. There's a couple things you want to do with that, like getting your boil off amounts and things like that to really dial that in. I'm not going to go through all that just because it kind of takes a while to show you everything in here, but I do at the end of this presentation have some links, and then we'll put those in the comments as well, that kind of have some good videos that show you how to do those things. And then also in that profile section is where you could do your mash profiles, your fermentation profiles, and things like that. So recipe creation, this is probably real similar to other software like Beersmith. There's nothing groundbreaking necessarily that's different in here, other than all your things you're going to be doing. So adjusting your mash, adjusting your water, it's all on the same view. You're not clicking around different tabs to mess with it. But I mean, essentially you would name your beer, you would make a quick change to your equipment profile. If, for instance, you wanted to do a 90-minute boil and your equipment profile is set up for 60, you could easily change that real quick, and then get going with that new equipment profile. It also has the same kind of style guideline double check that Beersmith does. So you could set your style of beer you want there at the top right, and then follow that as you add your grains and your hops to make sure you're hitting those values within that style. And then as far as adding a grain, you just click on the add button. You can search for a particular grain to add. If it's not there, you can create it yourself right there. Hit the button to update your inventory, so it adds it to inventory. Hit the save button and adds it to your recipe. And then the next time you go to create a recipe, that grain's in there. So you search for it, it's going to find it. So that's pretty neat. It's got, you don't have to click any extra buttons to save it. It just does that. The other kind of features on the recipe creation where everything's kind of all in one, your yeast calculations. So you can add your yeast here and then click on the calculate button and it'll tell you for your particular recipe how many packets or pouches of yeast to add. And then if you're going to create a starter, it'll right there tell you, how big your starter needs to be, how many steps your starter needs to be in order to get that ideal pitch rate. And then there's also the water adjustments that are in line on the recipe page as well, and we'll talk about that next. Okay, so on the water profile calculation in the recipe creation section, what's real cool about this is that they've made it real simple to use, even if you don't have a great understanding of what water profiles and water changes are, and if you're not interested necessarily in the science, but you want to target a particular style of beer. It's a pretty simple way to do. You're going to choose your source water, and that can either be your tap water that you've got a report for. It can be reverse osmosis water, which they do have a predefined default for. And then you're going to choose your target water. And your target water, they've got a bunch of predefined targets. So you could, if you're looking for American Pale Ale or for a New England IPA, you can select that. And then all you really need to do is click on the auto button, the auto calculation button, and it's going to just automatically tell you, how much gypsum, how much calcium chloride, and things like that you're going to add in order to hit that specific target. And then you can adjust at the bottom the mash acid, how much phosphoric acid or lactic acid you're going to add in order to reduce the pH. In my use, the pH has been consistently predicted correctly just about every time within the hundredths of degrees. So like if I'm shooting for like a 5.23 or something, when I test it with my pH meter, I'm right in that range, 5.25 sometimes. So I think what they've done here is really great. Before I started using Brewfather, I basically had to use two different apps, a recipe creation, and then I was using Brew and Water, which is a spreadsheet to do all those calculations to get my water profile. And so now that it's all just right here, that's another big reason why I've made the switch to Brewfather. Okay, next slide. So that brings us to Brew Day. And so Brew Day, there's nothing groundbreaking happening here differently than Beersmith, other than the design looks, in my opinion, a lot better. One of the big things I think that I don't think Beersmith offers is if you set it up in your equipment profile to have a sparge or how long your sparge takes to heat up, it'll actually set an alarm here for you. So if it takes 15 to 20 minutes to heat your sparge water, when there's 20 minutes left in your mash, it's going to give you a really annoying beeping sound and have an alert on the screen telling you, hey, start preheating your sparge water. So that's kind of a cool feature that I don't think is in Beersmith. As far as adjusting the recipe during brew day, so let's say you're brewing and you realize you don't have an ingredient like World Flock or something, but your recipe, it has it in there. So there's a timer set for you to throw it in. You can actually click on the edit batch recipe button, and you can edit and remove that World Flock out of there, and it's not going to affect your original recipe. So the next time you have, you want to brew this beer, it'll still call for it. But this particular batch, it won't have it in there. You won't have the timers for it, which is pretty good. You can store your readings right here on the same screen. So if you take your original gravity, pre-boil and post-boil, you can add that while you're in here in the brew day. And then you can add notes and comments as well. And then fermentation status. This is kind of a cool little page. It's a good way to kind of keep track of your final gravity and your temperature. So when your beer is finished, what the temperature is. I mean, granted, if you're taking these values manually, you're going to know just because you took the value. But if you're using something like Tilt to report these back in here, which I'm not yet, but it would report those in. You could see that cool little graph that shows you, what's happening with the beer. And graphs are cool anyway. So even if there's not a purpose for it, it's cool to look at. But another thing with that is you can kind of easily see when to cold crash, and get ready for packaging. If you have dry hopping to do, it'll show you on this page as well. And then one thing of note to kind of talk about is the community shared recipe library. You can browse through just about thousands of community created recipes. If you're looking for a particular one, like in this case, we're looking for Bell's Two Hearted, you can search for that particular recipe, pull it up. You can, open it up, you can edit it, you can brew it, you can share it back to the community library, all within the same app. So you're not having to go anywhere else outside of here to get these recipes or to reshare them. So it's kind of all in the same place. Everything and that's one of the big reasons I moved to Brewfather, is that everything, is in one place. Before I was having to go to 2 or 3 different sites and different applications to build and brew and all that, and I'm able to do that all within Brewfather. And then what I think is really cool and what's really unique with Brewfather is the documentation and their issue tracker. So documentation, they've done really well with getting some great documentation. I think there's a couple things missing that they're still planning to add. But if you're looking for definitions on the wording they use, or like wanting to know what something means, you can find that here in the documentation. They have guides to set up your equipment profile, creating your first recipe, your first batch. All of that can be found in the documentation. And then what's really unique, I think, and I don't think there's any other brew software doing something like this, and it really kind of hits to my nerdy side, is that they're using an issue tracker, and it's very transparent. So if you just wanted to go see what's coming up in the pipeline or what bugs have been reported, you can view that on their issue tracker. If you want to actually create an issue or put a request, and you have access to do that right here. So you actually have a little bit of a voice in the direction of what they build into the app. Whether it gets picked up or not, I think that depends on some voting from the community and stuff like that. But it's a really neat feature. I don't know any other software brewing wise that's doing that. So. Next slide.
Say, Josh, that's how I know what industry you work in, when your favorite feature might be the issue tracker.
Yeah. I'm a little nerdy on that regards, but yes, that's also part of where I, what I do daily as well. So that pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about with Brewfather. Right here, I've got a couple links to some videos that are pretty helpful in getting started, getting familiar with it, setting up your equipment profile, going through getting your boil off calculations and things like that. And then afterwards, I'll post those in the comments as well. And then if there's any questions or anything like that, I'd be happy, if we've got time, I can share my screen, go through a little demo or something, or just talk about it.
Got an eye on the Facebooks and the YouTube. Ryan's probably watching too. Is this any relation to? So when I saw Ryan put the poll up, I thought it was related to the Grainfathers. The Grainfather has a built-in recipe application too. Is this related to that, or is that this entirely different endeavor?
I think they're entirely different. I don't think there's any relation at all, as far as I'm aware. Now they do have integrations with Grainfather, I think, so you can actually pass this recipe to your Grainfather that you built in Brewfather. But as far as the correlation of the two businesses, I think they're completely separate.
Okay, yeah, that's neat, because when I first got my Grainfather and I used it with just using Beersmith 3, Beersmith was wildly different from water volumes and mash volumes and all kinds of other, and I used what was the community driven best Grainfather profile in Beersmith, and I put that same recipe from Beersmith to Grainfather, and it worked out way better than using the Beersmith version of the Grainfather profile than as opposed to using the Grainfather version of the Grainfather profile.
I did notice there was a forum comment on this software discussion, but unfortunately it was just Steve was telling us the software he used to use got discontinued also. So I was curious to see if it was a question on something.
Yeah, I think well, you talked about ProMashers earlier, and I think ProMash has not been changed in quite a while, but it was such
website's down.
Yeah, but ProMash was such a fundamental tool. Like it didn't have all this built-in things like like the modern stuff does. So ProMash still works for a lot of people because it's really like almost the Linux of with the exception of the updates coming out, but it's really like almost the Linux of beer software, where it's just so basic that it can kind of fit almost all the needs, and doesn't require a lot of updates. Whereas these more modern tools require so much updates with this new technologies and all kinds of craziness, that makes them more easy for lay people. But if you were in on the early days of ProMash, you learned it enough that now you are the only people that hold that knowledge.
Yeah, as I say, if I recall, wasn't 23rd Street still using ProMash? Because I know Brick was a user. And
I know Brick was, and I know Bucky was before him. I don't know if Tucker has maintained that. I think in his homebrewing days, Tucker did use ProMash, and I can't remember if we discussed Beersmith one time, but I don't know if Tucker ever converted. But part of the reason why professional breweries, when started with ProMash, continue to use ProMash is their numbers are so important to them, like how consistent their batches are. So like, whatever 25 barrels of Bitter Professor in 2003 has to taste the same as 25 barrels of Bitter Professor in 2020. And the only way to know that consistency is to know that you are using the same recipe. Like everything's, granted, the brew house changed in that time frame, but which might have been a good time for Tucker to transition to a different software. But yeah, generally, once the brew house is dialed in on a software and you've got all of those temperatures and specific heats and all of the measurements that you've taken time and time again and sort of dialed that that change by half, which is what I use with my beer software. So if my gravity or if my water's over by a half gallon, I'll adjust it by a quarter gallon. Or if my whatever, I just do half size increments every time I change, if I'm higher or up or down, to dial those profiles in so that my brewery is as accurate as it can be with my limited skill in measurement and my limited budget to buy high quality measuring tools.
Real fast, while we were talking about Beersmith and I mentioned licenses before turning over to Josh, I wanted to quick talk about the Beersmith licenses real fast. Share the screen. Okay. So with the Brewfather, Josh mentioned there's a free and a premium. With Beersmith 3, I wouldn't say make it more complicated, made more options. Beersmith 2, it used to be a one-time purchase and done. Here, I'll quick show that. Here's the one-time purchase and done with Beersmith 2. And they still sell Beersmith 2 licenses. But with 3, your option is you can do the one-time purchase again, but it includes limited cloud usage. Or if you go to the subscription software as a service type models, they do offer additional cloud space and some of these other, that's the primary, I think, differentiator, because they all 3 tiers offer archiving of cloud recipes. It's just, and Activate, for Pro, you can have up to 5 computers. So there is some different tiers here, but they do offer a one-time buy. So that's the software differences.
One-time buy is version 3 and 3 variants only. If you'll
Correct.
notice there, you're only going to get the minor upgrades. The other ones get you.
The difference here, it's all variants of 3X, because notice how they have the 3.x. It's kind of like with Beersmith 2. You got all the Beersmith 2s, but you don't get 3, whereas if you are paying $14.95 a year, if he goes version 4, you're going to get that.
Right. That was my point. The
Okay.
one-time purchase only gets you.
That said, Beersmith 2 lasted 8 years. If you just do the monetary multiplier there on 8 times $15, if you buy the outright every time, you may, if money savings the game, there's games to play with it. I hear Frank real fast. We bounce to the slide so I do have a quiz made. Let's see if I saved it. It's open still. Oh, I just need to go to present mode. But real fast, let's put that. It's not really a quiz. It's a quiz, but it's not a quiz. Generally, were we going to do 2 Beersmith licenses? Do we still have her? Oh, she's away from the thing. I'm going to go with the assumption that we were doing 2. Lee, I don't know if you remember if you ever hit me back on that. Yeah. So there's
we can. We have 5 total, so 2.
Yeah. So we do happen to have some licenses. So if you don't currently own Beersmith, you could play to win your own copy of Beersmith 3. So Frank put those codes up. I'm sorry I didn't click present mode. Now you should theoretically be able to join. Now that I have actually allowed it to allow you to join. So go ahead and enter that ahaslides.com. And I'm going to share screen in just a second, but it was kind of easier to read the code on. Oh, yes. Yep. So we'll give this a few minutes here. This is kind of something that usually takes a minute where everybody gets on.
So Brewfather is $20 a year for their premium, which gets you unlimited recipes, and then there's no limitation on devices or anything like that. If you want to get that a little bit cheaper, when I started, I used a coupon code called Homebrew Find that made it $15 for the first year.
And if you don't want to pay the annual fee, you can do a free service where you just don't get as many recipes in the cloud.
Right. Yeah. The free version gives you 10 recipes, and then you can hack that a little bit in order to make that work for you to where you never pay. But you're always going to be limited to a total of 10 recipes within that.
I'm going to go ahead and share screen at this point, Frank, just so people can see the lobby screen. Okay, we have Jared and we have Lee, and I'm getting in now too.
I am trying. I'm working with children arguing over dessert over my shoulder, so I apologize.
Ooh, what's for dessert?
I don't know. They've got banana bread, I think, was
whatever
tonight.
Maggie made for dessert.
All right, I'm sharing the screen.
And also, Jared, you're going down.
Oh, Jared's going down.
Frank,
Lee's gonna win it.
I'm getting this Beersmith. I'm getting this Beersmith.
Lee is in it to win it.
I'm good. I will relinquish all rights to Beersmith via competition.
Jared, I was kidding. Get back on. Where'd Jared go?
You scared him off, Lee. No, I think if your phone goes into standby, you temporarily disappear off the wish list. We'll give it. We got 6 to 7 people right now. We'll give it another minute. People are joining. I have it set to where I think we have 30 seconds per question. So I upped it from 15 seconds. So hopefully it's enough for our remote players. We're down to 6 again. Looks like
if you're remote, be sure to pay attention to your device for the questions and answers. All the live streams can vary in their how far they're back, because just the way sending moving pictures through the internet with audio attached can work. So it can be a little bit of a delay for you.
If we get back up to 7 here in the next minute, I'm going to click it because we somehow dropped to 4 and 5 for a while there. We're back to 4. Come on, if you make sure your device is on, let's get everybody on, and I'm going to click start. All right, 5. Come on, we're circling. All right, I'm going to go with 6, and I believe you can join in. Oh, there's 8. Okay, beautiful. I'm doing it. All right, here's the first question. It's going to pop up in just a second. What are some of the brewing options we mentioned? The countdown starting. All right, there are 20 seconds remaining. Yeah, when you're live, it seems like forever available for options, but again, we know people see it a little latently, so it's that's the bummer about being remote. All right. I purposely threw that Brew Daddy in just to confuse, since we had Brew Father in there. All right. Looks like we got most.
I want Brew Daddy now, by the way.
Maybe if Josh launches his software, he'll be Brew Daddy. All right. Looks like I'm not gonna keep playing. I meant to skip the points questions, but I put myself on the leaderboard. I'm not gonna win. I already have it. So, all right. Question 2. Go for it, gang. Here we go. Beersmith and Brewfather can both track inventory. This is a true false. Made it nice and simple. So this is just going to quiz on a couple of the features. We had to find a way to differentiate everyone. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to have questions over software. But if we're going to give it away to the top 2, we got to have a top 2. All right. 7 seconds remain. All right. That was correct. So it looks like a predominant number of people got it. Cool. And let's see our leaderboard. Some new folks joining the board. Frank's on top. Steven right behind. It's a tight race for the top 3 there. All right, question 3. Brewfather has free and paid versions. True, false again. Had to keep them somewhat simple in questions, kind of see if you're paying attention, but some way to pick our top winners. Then stick around because we've got a couple fun just survey questions about what you're brewing or what's your next brew. So, all right, 4 seconds. 3, 2, 1. True, indeed. There are, as Josh mentioned, a free and a paid option with however many recipes you can store being the differentiator. All right. Still tight up top there. Question 4 of 5. And like I said, after the 5, there'll be a couple survey questions, but there's 5 for points. What year was Beersmith originally released? All right, so make sure you take a second to think about it because there's a lot of dates there. But what year was the original first release of Beersmith? All right, 7 seconds remain. 3, 2, 1. All right, 2003. Uh-oh, somebody was partying with Prince. We have a 1999 on the board. All right, and with our final question coming up, Frank's still holding that top spot, though. Oh, John got bumped out of number 2.
I think John was partying with Prince.
Ah. You can customize your equipment in which of the softwares? Make sure you pay attention because there is a both option. So choose your correct option. Which software offered equipment profile and equipment changing? 15 seconds remain. And this is the final question for points. All right, both, and it was a resounding success. Everyone got it. Let's see. The fastest trigger fingers got the most points. Final leaderboard. All right, Frank took it with the long hair, don't care, and it looks like Steven right behind him on that.
Like I said, I own Beersmith 3, so whoever
Okay.
drinker is, we would need to
So,
know
yeah,
drinker's
drinker.
name. You would have to comment to claim your name.
Yeah, if you're here in the voice chat with us, feel free to unmute and say, "Hey, it's me." Otherwise, if you're in the YouTube chat, say something here. And if we don't hear from drinker, Timothy, that puts you as our next recipient if we don't hear from drinker. So we'll stay tuned. We'll move on for the
I
moment.
assume this Timothy is a relative of Josh, so I think Josh would have him on Grainfather or Beerfather over or Brewfather over Beersmith.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying. I think we got him moving with his first batch on Brewfather just a week ago. So I'm pushing him towards that direction.
Well, we haven't heard anything from
I didn't want to.
I'm going to quick move on to our survey questions. Lee, what were you saying, though?
Oh, I just didn't want to like jinx anything ahead of time in case I was going to win Beersmith 3.
Oh.
But Josh kind of sold me on Brewfather.
All right, so or survey questions. Do you use any brewing software? I would just kind of want to get a gauge for tonight. So if you already did, yes. If you didn't or won't, no. But if we kind of inspired you to give something a try, especially because Brewfather's free, has a free option, a non-committal's available. You could choose I'm going to after tonight. So looks like the most of us are already software users.
See, I chose yes there, but like I loved Brew Toad, and then that got discontinued a few years ago. So I'm at my limit of my free trial of Brewer's Friend, and I don't love it. I mean, it works. So I'm looking for something else. So this was super helpful.
Okay. Have you homebrewed since March? 3 options. I've been asking this about every month. I'm curious to see if it progresses, if the ratio of not at alls goes down any, or if the yes at once has become multiple times yet, or if you just did your one brew and you've been drinking your quarantine face off of it since. All right, looks like we have 7 people on right now, and we've got 6 answers. 4 seconds remain. And I think I have 2 open-ended questions. What's your next upcoming brew? I think you can submit multiple times, but don't quote me on this. I just set this up right before. And I'll go ahead and submit here. So we got a pineapple IPA. Is that Josh or Jared? Oh, someone's doing some.
That's me.
Oh, you're gonna
I'm gonna do the Forge by the Sea again.
Okay. Oh, yep. Good point on the Lewisburg cider hits checkers by the case. I love that's. I'm waiting for that too.
I'll post it. I generally my wife goes to the store at least once a week, and then I go fairly sometimes throughout the week. But yeah, when it hits, I generally get I believe it's $5 a gallon.
Yeah, I believe it. I think that's
so
right.
So you can buy a case. You can buy the case. They'll have them by the case. They'll have like a giant pallet right inside the door if you've not been to Checkers often or when cider season is happening. It's pretty easy to get together.
Yeah, and some of the other stores in town, Walmart, Hy-Vee, they want like $8 a gallon for the same gallon. So it's just a good deal even if you just want to drink cider, let alone brew it, All right, I think that's all of our answers. And then our next one.
I'm going to chime in on the Smash 2-Row with Citra. I did that a few years ago, and it was amazing.
Oh, yeah?
So good luck with that, whoever that was.
I know. I wish we had more time since it's their next brew, but what are you bringing to our upcoming beer swaps? If you're going to come. This is what I mentioned during the t-shirt exchanges. Looks like we're going to have some of that chocolate cherry stout we got teased earlier with. I'll definitely take a bottle of that. That was Steven's. I'm excited to try that. Otherwise,
no, I was the one that did chocolate cherry stout. It's the one I brewed like in February.
Okay.
That I haven't yet.
Oh, it looks like we got.
Are you still excited?
Yeah, I'm still excited. I just saw he was drinking one, and so I assumed that was that one.
I think he was drinking a chocolate cherry wheat.
Oh, you're right. I just re-looked. some chocolate cherry beers may sound alike on first glance. So it looks like we've got, ooh, nice, the Calista Hazy NE IPA, experimental cream stout. Yeah, I'll have lots of beer. Blueberry milkshake sour is not the only thing I'm bringing. I'll have the rest of my Scotch ale. Might have an IPA. I forget what I've got down there right now. I'm probably gonna at least have 2 to 3 options. So I'd love to swap some bottles so we can have some beers down the road. Oh, there's the chocolate cherry wheat. See, we were. All right. So just don't forget those shirt swaps. There's going to be, actually, here, let's just go ahead and real fast. Frank, can you bring that slide back up? Because with that upcoming Thursday, I want to drive those home real fast. That was like slide 6, 7, I think. And we still, I don't think, have heard from Drinker. Oh, no, Ron did. Never mind. Ron Spangler was our drinker. So we did find, sorry, Tim, we did find our home for our second Beersmith license.
Way to go, Ron. Congrats.
Yeah.
Slide should be up. Okay. Shirts,
so
first
yeah,
round.
We were talking earlier, the t-shirt pickups. It's going to be this Sunday. Oh, no, you're on the right one. Just because I want to show the dates. Sunday, September 13th. That's here in 3 days. We're going to be at Lee's house. The address is on the forum, but I'm also going to put it out there. I'm going to put both these dates and both these addresses on Facebook as well for anybody who doesn't get on the forum frequently enough to catch. So both these options, there will be a beer swap table. So bring some brews up. I don't want to quote for Travis, but I think he's going to send some my way for swapping. And if anybody else in Johnson County doesn't want to make the journey out, I can do some swaps on your behalf. Drop me some beer and I'll bring some back. But yeah, Sunday the 13th and Thursday, September 24th. That's all the content we had for tonight. Did anybody, before we tune the stream out, did anybody else have any other like seminar related questions or event or business they want to address while we're all here?
I gotta make sure. Okay. Did we hear back from that email I sent you earlier in the week?
Oh, the Lee where Lee was checking in on the.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Not yet. I still need to follow up on that.
Okay.
So.
But yeah, potential yeast seminar from like actual yeast people coming up. We'll see if we can work that out.
White Labs sent us an email, or?
Yeah, I think it was White Labs.
So yeah, so during all the lockdown period, for those of you that are like big question marks coming up, generally I've gotten a few emails from the AHA and some smaller people that I didn't really recognize as being beneficial to us. As like, hey, if you guys are meeting virtually, we can sit in on a Zoom call and talk about what we do. And the one that sounded the most promising recently was last week. A representative from White Labs sent us an email asking if we would like them.
Imperial yeast.
Imperial yeast. So, yeah. So they asked if we'd have them in and they could do a little talk about their yeast. I don't know that I've heard of Imperial yeast, but it's I'm sure they'll talk about yeast in general and then tell you all the cool things about the yeast they make, which is
James carries their yeast, and they've been a previous sponsor of our homebrew competition. So that's how I got my Imperial Yeast swag hat. I wish I could find it right now, but with moving, I have no idea where it is. So it'll be cool to have Imperial out because they've been somewhat intertwined with us for a short little bit. But yeah, we've got that, and then hopefully AHA had offered signups previously for club, having them come out for a meeting. We missed the window, but they should be here in the next probably 3 weeks opening the window again. So maybe either winter or thereabouts, we might have someone from AHA come do a topic with us as well. So there's a few cool opportunities coming up for some additional virtual content not produced internally. All right. If there's no other business, Frank, we can go ahead and wind down the stream, and then we can just hang out and drink beer. Let me know when you're wrapped.
There's lots of buttons to push on the back
Yeah,
side
no,
of
you're
what
fine.
we're seeing here. So, but, yeah.